Good morning, everybody. We're here with David van Berlo today, who is from the Dutch Ministry of Agriculture, Nature and Food Quality. He's clearly responsible for the fabulous, glorious forests all around us. And he is here today to talk about setting up a network, which is what he's done as well, called Civil Servant 2.0, about Government 2.0. He's going to answer some questions about how do you set up an online community, and particularly within government. This has been a very hot topic recently with a number of journals, such as McKinsey Quarterly and others, talking about how really Government 2.0 hasn't reached the level that it should be reaching. And so there's a broader question in the community about why and where the success stories are. I'm sure he'll be here to tell us about those today. He'll answer questions about what is Civil Servant 2.0 and what is the effect of Web 2.0 on government generally. He's a historian by background with a degree from a Dutch university. And in 2009, he won the Information Professional of the Year Award in the Netherlands from the Society of Librarians, Knowledge Management and Information Professionals. Even though I'm sure you're very sleepy, can you please put your hands together for a warm welcome for David?
Thank you. Thank you. Can everyone hear me okay? Okay, yeah. I must say I'm a bit nervous because usually then I don't give speeches in English because usually, of course, I'm aimed at Dutch civil servants, and you're sort of a different crowd than the one I have usually in front of me. Usually always try and be a bit more interactive, but since this is a bit of a big hall, it's a bit hard to do that, so we'll just do the questions at the end. I think it's easier. I'll start by going to the first slide. Yesterday there was a colleague of mine was here, Arnoud Ponchoen. He works at the Ministry of Interior, and I asked him, well, do you have any tips? And he said, don't wear a suit. Well, incidentally, I'm actually staying with friends in a sort of a farmhouse a bit further on here, so I wasn't bringing my suit to the national park. So I put this on. I hope you don't think it's pretentious for me to wear a sort of a t-shirt that I don't really know what it's about. Anyway, someone will explain, I hope, after this show. So this is not my usual attire. Who am I? I'm working for the Ministry of Agriculture, Nature and Food Quality. I'm a sort of a project manager there, and I set up a sort of a network for called Civil Servant 2.0. And the question is, of course, I'm here to talk about how this works. I'm not actually here to talk about Government 2.0. They said, no, you have to talk about how this works with communities. But naturally, I'm going to talk about what the community is about as well, because that's my main story. So I'll try to do a bit of both. Civil servant, I've made some notes for myself, actually, but I thought, I might just as well show them to you. And if I'm not clear in what I'm saying, at least you can read what I mean and fill it in yourself. Civil Servant 2.0, it's a network of people who are interested in what Web 2.0 means for government. So I'll first go into that. And I've sort of written a book about it. You can also read the book. It's in Dutch though, but on the internet there's a wiki, and thanks to Google Translate, you can all read it in your own language. Things are so easy nowadays. But Civil Servant 2.0 or Government 2.0 has an effect on in three areas. The main area being, of course, in the relationship between government and society. Secondly, in how organizations work internally. And thirdly, what does this mean for civil servants? What kind of civil servant do you need then? And I think that especially looking at how the relationship between government and society, there's a lot of boundaries that are sort of getting blurred at the moment. And you know, we used to have a situation where we just said, well, we just put a lot of people in a building, and we'll make it smart people, and they sort of work out what has to be done. And there's a sort of, you get this gap between those people sitting there in a building trying to work out all these plans and giving them to politicians, and then people deciding about them. And on the one hand, and secondly, the people in the land, the people for which you're working, for whom you're working. So this gap is now, I feel, getting wider at the moment. But there's a possibility to bring these two closer together, to sort of see where you can sort of work together, how you can use knowledge in society, how you can get people to work with civil servants together to get new plans. So that's the external aspect. Internally, the situation is that there's a lot of, there's a hierarchy with all these different organizations within ministries and within local governments that also have all these boundaries between them. And I think there as well you will see that because of a lot of digital new digital software and social media, people can work together over these boundaries, and you get a different sort of organization. And this will mean a lot, of course, for management, how to get things done within organizations, how to get people from outside your own organization involved in what you're doing. So all these things do require a different sort of civil servant, not one that's very good at writing position papers and that sort of thing, but more of a, perhaps a community manager and a sort of a process manager who is very good at attracting the right people, the right knowledge into his process that he's responsible for, getting the right people around the table, but then in a virtual team, so digitally, and making sure that you make these steps, then you get to a result. So that's the three areas where there's going to be, I think, a change in how government work and how government organizations work. So the main area the main a difference in how things work nowadays, how things work because of the internet and because of Web 2.0, is the fact that, it's actually those three words. The web, it's an open community. If things aren't open, you cannot make any connections, you cannot find information, you cannot find other people. So the openness is really, that what makes it all possible for people to connect and to find each other and work together. Secondly, the social aspect means that it's not about hierarchies and not about people having a certain function and giving people a job and saying, well, this is what you have to do in your job and that sort of thing, but having the right people there, finding a social network, and perhaps that might be someone who does that for a hobby, or someone who does that only for a very limited amount of time, but getting the right knowledge and the right people together in a sort of a social setting, and with that team getting things done. And thirdly, empowerment is about being able, giving other people the tools and the information for them to do something and get some work done. So those are the main. If you look at all the tools that are available nowadays on the internet and things you can do with it. You can, if you blog about something, you actually publish it to the whole wide world. This is something that is quite new. I mean, that wasn't possible earlier. So people are more empowered to bring their information around to the outside, getting people together to work together with them, and letting it grow. It's all about empowerment. And I think if you do the same to, giving information to society, for example, government information, and being able for other people, for example you, to work on that information and build something yourself, you're actually empowering society to pick up certain tasks of government, for example. And same goes within an organization. How do you empower your employees to do more and to reach their goals in the way they want to? So it's also about empower. So those three words are very important, and it's actually those three, sort of rules that I try to apply when I'm working with my own network, the Civil Servant 2.0 network. So how did it all start? Actually, it was a bit of an accident, because when I got working for the ministry, we were thinking, there's something happening, 2.0. What does this mean for government? We have to find out. Well, let's make a project of it. David, you go do that project. And I started blogging about it to attract more people, to see what other knowledge there is in the world, people who want to discuss things, that sort of thing. And while blogging, people come by, different people, and I was wondering, who are these people? So I started a network site, a Ning, to sort of collect all these people together, and so I can see, who are they? What do they have to offer? What knowledge do they have? How can we use that in the project? And that's how actually the network sort of started by accident, because now 2,000 people are a member nearly, so it's grown a bit out of hand. So actually I was myself empowered by Web 2.0 software and possibilities to start this up, and finally to get where I am today, standing here on the podium. Thirdly, that was last year, so to say. So in last year, I was trying to get this network together. As I said, I wrote a book about it, and it sort of got bigger and bigger and bigger, more work to do. So I thought, perhaps I should get some other people to join in. And so I sort of got a group of people together that had been, extremely active, and asked them to sort of come to in a sort of a group of editors. And this group has grown to about 15 people or something. And we started doing things together, so I didn't have to do it alone. Okay, there's a group of editors now. Next thing there was, I thought, if I have a new idea, let's sort of make a list of tasks. And so I made a list of tasks, all the new ideas I had. This should be done, that should be done, and put names behind it. And also gave it out to the rest of the world, saying, hey, here's a group of tasks. If you want to be active for Civil Servant 2.0, why don't you pick up one of these tasks? Which then didn't happen. So that wasn't the right way to get my network active. Another thing I then tried, as I said, I'm just stumbling along here trying to figure out how this all works myself. Another thing I tried was, okay, let's see if I can find people that are willing to participate, are willing to be active as a sort of a volunteer, and just asking them, hey, wouldn't this specific task be something for you? And that seems to work a little bit better. So hopefully I'm getting a few tasks like these done now to actually let the network grow and let the sites grow and get some activities there. For example, we do have a sort of a member of the week nowadays. I just asked someone, hey, wouldn't that be nice for you if you would organize this whole member of the week thing? Well, she's doing that right now, it's working, so I think that's going to be my new tactic in getting people involved. So the sort of that group of editors didn't really work to get. They're doing a lot of things. They're doing a lot of basic things like seeing if there's anything wrong on the internet sites, if people are not using foul words in discussions, that sort of thing, and greeting new members, that sort of thing. But for getting, they're all busy, so to say. So getting new things done, new ideas done. I've got this new method of just asking people, and this group of editors is now sort of more of a sounding board, of a collective board where we discuss ideas. But the problem with this group now is that it's a closed group, and as I said, I want to be open, I want to work through networks and want to work through social connections, and this is a closed group, so that's not going to work. So I'm actually, as I said, stumbling along here, trying to find out how to get this done, because I've found out I can't do this all alone. There's a lot of people who want to work. How do I get them active? And they're all working, they're all busy, they all got things to do, so how can I make them participate in what I'm doing? And there's a few things I learned while doing that, and I read a book about, there was a book about how communities work, open source communities. You probably know more about that than I do, but it says something about a benevolent dictator. Well, as I was introduced, I'm a historian and I don't really like dictators. I've read too much about them, but and if they're benevolent, usually they're not. So I don't see that really work, but I think the idea is here that there must be someone, perhaps a community manager, who is, well, sort of the active member who, well, I think picks up a lot of pieces as well, but also is someone who gives energy to others to, to participate and to become active and to keep going. That's a very important part of it. Secondly, I think that when you look at how decisions are made, a benevolent dictator, as I said, it doesn't really sound that well, but I think that what you do need to do is make it a sort of an open discussion and make sure that as soon as there's a sort of a goal to be to reach, there's someone who has to say, okay, this is what we're going to do. So you have to sort of push the button after the discussion. So I'm using this group of editors to, as I call them, so to say, to sort of have the discussion all together, and next, someone has to say, okay, that's the way we're going to go. And I guess it has to be me then. Also very important is that you have a vision and the goal to work for, and that I think it's if you look at the members of Civil Servant 2.0, most of them looking at me to sort of make the next step in what is this vision for Civil Servant 2.0 going to be. And you need to have a goal and saying, and it needs to be a pronounced goal. So, for example, for Civil Servant 2.0, we're looking at a network of people, so it's not an organization. It's secondly, it's about government 2.0, so it's not about anything else. So it's not for civil servants, solely for civil servants, but also for other people to become a member, as long as it's about government 2.0. It's about trying to exchange experiences, and it's about learning about how to do this. So how to be a civil servant, how to work this, and what steps to make. So that's sort of the goal, and if you have that written out, you can always point at the goal and saying, okay, that's what we're going to do. It's a bit like Google having these 10 sort of lines that sort of a strategy of how they are working. So that's what I use. As I said, what I've learned is don't do it alone. Trying to get many people involved, even if it's only for little things. Cutting things up in small parts is very important, so other people can pick up things. As I said, everyone's busy. I think that trying to get a sort of a subgroup thing going as well. It's not just me talking to everyone, but that around a certain task you can get other people involved. For example, we do have meetings as well. Now there's a few people doing that, but there's one person that I usually speak to as responsible for getting that done. And what I've also learned that to reel people in, so to say, you have to start with small things. You can just say, just start by blogging or start by discussing. If people get enthusiastic, then you can give them other tasks, and that's how you sort of reel them in to become active volunteers. And of course, empowering people, so making it possible for other people to do things. We're sort of working to get ambassadors in different organizations within government, local government, provinces, that sort of thing, other ministers, and for other people to sort of spread the word about Civil Servant 2.0. You have to, of course, give them all kinds of information and possibilities to spread it out. For example, a sort of a standard poster that people can print out and hang up on the wall of in the building of their organization. So what is going to be the next step? I'm thinking about opening up this sort of board of a group of editors to make it more open so other people can flow in. I'm thinking what I'm also doing is sort of setting a Google-like list, setting up a Google-like list of how we work as Civil Servants 2.0. So people can look at that and think for themselves how they can take Civil Servant 2.0 further. Actually, I'm just working on the top-down area as well, getting sort of management involved and that sort of thing. It's not just a bottom-up thing. You have to work from both ways. And getting some ambassadors in different organizations. So, as I said, I'm just stumbling along here and trying to find out how I'm supposed to do this. The reason why I think this is interesting is because, especially interesting, not just for getting the network further and through this network putting sort of a government 2.0 on the agenda, but also because it's a sort of a metaphor for how society may perhaps work, and that's where again it gets interesting, of course. If you look at all the possibilities of the internet, how things are being organized, if you look at open source communities, how can you use these mechanisms? How can you use them to make government and society better, to make it work better? That's the big question, of course. Could you see, for example, Prime Minister Balkenende as a community manager, or could you see, if there are people from Britain, British Prime Minister Brown as a community manager? People would laugh at the idea. Oh, I did see a very good TED talk by Brown yesterday. So he does have this vision, and he can really bring that over. But he's a better speaker than I am, by the way. But Obama as a community manager, some people might think, hey, yeah, I do recognize something in those words. So I think that's going to be an interesting period in trying to find out, okay, how can we make that work? What kind of what works and what doesn't? And this whole idea of getting the Civil Servant 2.0 network to work that way is also a way of learning about, hey, how can we get society to work that way? So usually when I talk to government organizations, to civil servants, in speeches there I say, well, start inside your organization, start within your organization and try to work in a sort of a Civil Servant 2.0 sort of way within your organization with your own employees. Because it's sort of a safer environment to find out how do wikis work, how do social networks work, how does blogging work, how does all this work, and how you get processes going in this new way. Second thing I usually tell them is get your own information online. The reason why I say start internally is because a lot of people find it, a lot of civil servants find it very menacing to go outside and start reacting to blogs and everything. Is people don't know how this works, what the culture, the blogging culture, the Web 2.0 culture is. So they're a bit nervous about starting there. So if you start internally, you can learn about that. But if you want to do something externally, if you want to do something towards society, at least you can start by opening up your own data, making sure that other people can build things upon that data. So you don't have to do anything yourself, and you're still helping society along with all the data you have within the organization. So then it all comes back to you as well, of course, because if we're working together in society, it's not just, me, who naturally is being paid to do a certain job, but it also is to, everyone else in the country, in your own country, to see what can my contribution be to society in building things, perhaps with that raw data, or and I must say, looking around here, seeing all the notices, be a volunteer, help clean up the campus, that sort of thing, it does appeal to me because, that's the sort of spirit that we're looking for, not just one weekend or a few days here at Passover, but also, of course, in how society might work. And there are of course, examples of this, especially in cleaning up things. There are a lot of, for example, meetup sites in America about cleaning up parks. There's an Estonian example where 50,000 people joined in to clean up the country. So there is a nice metaphor for trying to clean up this park and being a volunteer here and taking a responsibility and doing that sort of nationwide. So as I said, we're just starting out here. 2,000 members of Civil Servant 2.0 is not a lot if you look at the whole thank you. The whole group of the whole body of civil servants working in the Netherlands, for example. But at least and there's a few Belgians are members of the site as well. But at least we're starting, and it's going to be. I think it's a very, very interesting journey for the coming years to see how organizations are going to change, how government is going to change, and how society is going to change because of this. So, that's my story. I hope I left enough question time there. Right. And there's one question already. Sorry, you said 10 minutes.
Hello. I have a remark and a question. The remark is that if civil servants are trying to get hold of how things work in the open source community, perhaps a suggestion, there are excellent documenters and a lot of documentation needs to be written in the community. Just sign on for one of the projects that sounds interesting to them and start writing and discussing things. It's probably a good way to just practice before leading a community. That might be a very nice idea. The question I had is, have you read the Transition Handbook by Rob Hopkins?
Sorry?
the Transition Handbook by Rob Hopkins. I think you should read it. It's
thank you.
It's within the civilian world. It's people who are trying to build communities, and after they've grown to a certain level of maturity, step up to local government to say, we want to cooperate with you. It's an active movement that's developing rapidly in the Netherlands. There are tens of such societies building up in cities around the Netherlands, as well as in the rest of the world. The main intention is to work against peak oil, that is the despair of oil running out, by way of forming local communities. So you have to know other people around you, both government and civilians. And that might be a very interesting thing to combine with what you're doing here. It's not electronic, but it's about communication. And that's what you're looking for, I think. I'll write down the title for you.
Thank you.
Michi Lena's NL Foundation, and the guy who wrote the title of the poem on his shirt. It's a function that calls itself and eternally becomes a void function and crashes your whole computer if you type it into one of these computers here. So actually,
I wouldn't know where to type it, so don't worry.
So first three things. I'm very glad you're on stage here. I'm really happy to see that you're sort of venturing out and talking to a lot of people that may have a lot of ideas about how to run things, because this is a sort of a pit of people, a snake pit of people that have bad experiences sometimes with governments. We have people here that literally were thrown out of their country by governments and followed and had their colleagues imprisoned and so on. And so there's a lot of people that you should talk to here. The second thing is, you said Obama's community manager. I know Obama's a very fashionable guy, but I think actually you should look at the parliamentarians, because we live in a parliamentary democracy, and the parliamentarians are actually the community. You said don't do it yourself and have somebody to watch over it. Actually, Balkenende should never be a community manager. Everybody knows that. It's the parliamentarians that round up clans. And so the SP or the Socialist Party or the Liberals, or they grow clans because they're good community managers. And then you have people within the parliament that you appoint to do certain functions, and they are just management. And I think having that layer into your model, because people never, when they talk about government 2.0, talk about parliamentary democracy, and it's actually a very fundamental point is that we don't live in a state where the government works. It's the politicians that are assisted by civil servants, and they have to do the footwork in getting the community grounded. I mean, if you look at how the Socialist Party does
I know how it works, yeah. But if I may come on to that, the point is that a lot of things are being done by government. Most things ministers and politicians don't know about, because, I mean, it's just doing business. I mean, there's 100,000 people working in government, and they're all doing things, either looking at in a sort of part of town, trying to clean up the neighborhood, what has to be done to clean up the neighborhood. They're figuring that out, or there's a lot of people, of course, getting together, people to think up new ideas about a better, well, for example, in the US, a better health system. But in doing so, that whole process, the whole process before you get to politicians, is actually what civil servants do. And my point is, don't do this alone, because there's a lot more knowledge in society than there is in government. So in preparing ideas for politicians, in that part, well, you can get a lot more people involved, and you can get a lot more communities involved. And same goes after, of course, a political decision, after it's been to Parliament or after it's been to the Council. Of course, then it has to be made into a reality, into fact. You have to do something. And in that area as well, how can you do that in a more of an open way and a social way, and in a way that you are actually empowering people and not doing everything yourself? So I do get your point about politics, but I'm actually talking not about politics, but about the actual work of government.
I have another question about how do you bridge the gap? Because I can assume that when you're in the ministry, you cannot just call the system administrator and say, hey, give me a Linux box and I will start my blog. But on the other hand, if you host it somewhere on Blogspot, the ministry will not take it seriously. And if you see how the government looks at things like the internet, well, when it's election time, everybody suddenly has a blog, and Jan-Peter Balken is on Hives and on LinkedIn, and everybody sees how fake that is and how it's not run by him. So I see a big gap between those things. And how do you get the civil servants to come out, and how do you get the public to come in and come closer together?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, that's what Civil Servant 2.0 is about, sort of, to answer those questions. And there's a lot of examples. I mean, the point is, it's a lot more visible if a lot of people come together somewhere on the internet, for example, around a petition, an online petition. If a lot of people come together, it's very hard to ignore that message. And I think at the moment, you can still sort of negate that such events, but I think it's going to be harder and harder. We had in the Netherlands, there's of course the example of 70,000 people, I think, signing a petition against amateur use of fireworks around New Year's Day or Old Year's Day. So there were 70,000 people who signed that, but it was only 2 people who started this petition. So these 2 people, although they were alone because they could use the internet and because there's a site like petitions.nl, they had a lot of sort of power to put this point on the agenda. Of course, the next thing is how to make sure that it's actually used within government. Well, that's one of the things I'm working on, of course, to make it more visible that, as I said, I think that the fact that nowadays people can see what all these changes are and can see when a lot of people are coming together, this will in the end have an impact on how governments will have to work. And well, this is sort of my story, but I think, and I'm trying to convince people, colleagues of that, but I think also that it's not only my story. I think that the sound will be so loud that it can no longer be ignored in the end. And perhaps not in this first petition, and especially not on a petition that only has 20 subscribers, but I think that's going to have an impact. And there's a lot of other examples also in working together, and also in building perhaps better online services. If these services are being used more often than the official services built by government, I mean, what are you going to do? It's very hard to negate that.
Okay. I want to applaud your effort for being here. It's very good to see that the government is talking on an event like this. What I was wondering about, what is the relationship?
Actually, I'm not the government. I'm just the government official.
You're a civil servant, so I see you as a representative of our government. So that's sort of, maybe the better way to say this. I'm actually interested in what the relationship is between this program, Ambtenaar 2.0, and the NOIV, the open source, open standards initiative van Heemskerk. Is there a relationship, and
no.
If so, could you elaborate why not, or why there is one?
Well, as I said, this is a network, so it's not actually linked to any official projects except my personal project that I'm doing at the Ministry of Agriculture. And we're trying to stay away from that because it's not where our power is, so to say. I mean, this is a network. It's just the reason that there are 2,000 members. That is why people notice it, and that is how we put Government 2.0 on the agenda. which is a different thing from, well, of course there are government organizations also working on different aspects of, well, for example, open source software, but also Government 2.0. My colleague who was here yesterday, he's working for part of the Ministry of the Interior that works on e-participation and Government 2.0. But it's a different thing than a network of people.
Is it different because the three terms that you mentioned, open, social, and empowerment, especially with open and empowerment, I see. Thank you. The open and empowerment, I see a direct link with the objectives of the free software, the open standards communities.
Sure.
And I can imagine that it's really hard to start a new project from scratch, basically. And it might be very useful to gather the energy and ideas of the people that are surrounding within these communities that are already fluent, basically, of the language of open empowerment communities and all these kind of things. Because there might be a slight difference between the Web 2.0 and the openness and the socialness. And that's one of the critical note that I would like to put forward. It's really important to see the difference between Web 2.0, which might have a lot of things included which have nothing to do with openness, socialness, or empowerment.
Yeah.
Can I ask you a question? Because as a background as a journalist, I thought you might be able to answer this. One of the, some governments have embraced this Web 2.0 for their benefit of communication sharing within government. So the U.S. military has got Intellipedia, so that different agencies that wouldn't otherwise talk to each other. And then there's the element of sharing outside. I'd be interested to know, would you have a view on how successful the Dutch civil service, not talking about politics, has been in each of those? Could you rate it on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being reaching its capacity of what it could be versus where it's at today?
Oh, right. In using these internally, you mean, like Intellipedia?
One is internally, and then one is the external with the community. So using the technology first for internal.
Yeah. Well, actually, I think we're using it better externally than internally, because externally it's very easy to well, for example, set up blogs or start twittering or whatever, and getting people together, doing all these e-participation projects. I think actually externally we're doing that better, all these different organizations, all these different local councils and that sort of thing, than internally, because internally it's actually a problem that there's a lot of organizations and there's a lot of different systems being used, so it's actually hampering collaboration internally. So it's a lot harder to start working with these tools internally and with this way of working than externally. So, but still, we're just starting. I think there's, I usually write about the potential, and then you're always thinking, well, the potential is over there somewhere, and now we're here. And a lot of colleagues I know are still over there. So, if I were to rate it, I would still give it a 2 out of 10, something like that.
For the internal. For the internal
external. For the internal, that would be 1 then.
There are other questions?
And the potential is enormous, but
that's good to know.
We're just starting out.
Hi, I definitely applaud your efforts being here and interacting with the community. I'm from America. If this ever happened in America, there would be a revolution if civil servants and government started talking, especially in the hacker community. I noticed a lot of what you talked about with 2.0. You talked about things being involved in the community, but you also talked about there being a community organizer and a dictator. I'm curious why, when hackers talk about things, we don't need a leadership. Here at HAR, there's thousands of people. There doesn't need to be an overarching structure. There definitely doesn't need to be a dictator with ultimate power. So my question is, why, when government or people from the government start talking about 2.0, why does there need to be a dictator with ultimate power, even though you admit that that's been a really horrible idea in the past? Why do we need an outdated concept like a dictator?
Well, I got that from an open source book actually, but open source community. But I do have an answer. I do have an answer to that because finally you have to get a document or a decision ready for politics, as I was talking about with Michiel. So you do have to have a certain goal in reaching a point where there's there's a document or a decision ready to be sent to Parliament or to be sent to a minister or a council or whatever. And in that process, there's a lot of things that you have to weigh, so to say. So there has to be someone who has the role of, community manager or whatever, a role or a process manager or what you call it. So someone has to have the role to keep that or that date in the back of his mind and the point that he wants to get at. But I think the change is in how you get other people to join in that in building that final decision. And like I said, in getting the right ideas in getting the right knowledge in, perhaps in getting the right opinions in as well. But I think as soon as you start about opinions, it's nice to have a view of what opinions there are around a certain subject, but you can't really do anything with them, because as soon as you start weighing them, you're getting in a sort of a democracy situation, and that's not the goal. Our goal as civil servants. That's at the end of the line when it gets to politics. So, as I said, in getting the knowledge and ideas together and taking steps towards a decision that you can lay before a minister or an alderman or whatever, in that area, you do need someone to pinpoint that process, so to say.
A manager. You need a manager.
Yes, the process manager. Right. That's what I said. Also, finally, you were also talking about Obama as a politician. The reason why I chose him, because he was trying very hard in his campaign to use, of course, these methodologies, new methods, to get attention and get people involved. And he's trying to do that as well now in how the United States government is going to work. With data.org, starting all kinds of discussions. So he is looking for ways to make it this idea of government 2.0 actual, and that's why I think it's an interesting process. And I hardly see any other countries doing that. So I'm very interested in what's happening there. And of course, Australia does have a sort of a task force that is looking into all the possibilities and how they should be, where they should be going. But
I've got just one last question. So
last question.
Anything else before? I know there was an interesting case in Washington D.C. where the local government there had apps for democracy, and on a $50,000 budget of contest, they got 47 useful apps for being able to track everything from street crime to potholes, and it would have otherwise cost $2.5 million in bringing in professional contractors. Has the Dutch government done much of that, bringing in the outside apps developers to integrate what the information the community might want, that sort of thing?
The Ministry of the Interior had they had a sort of a prize thing last year, and there were a few interesting apps, not the apps, but ideas about apps, and they do get a little funding, about 25,000, I believe, euros, and they are being built right now. But I do think it's very small still.
Early days.
There's also, sorry?
It's early days.
Yeah, so that's the Ministry of Interior. There's also, of course, hackthegovernment.nl. It's an initiative that has the same goal. It's a bit like what they or something like that in England as well. And well, those are the sorry. Yeah, you could show that as an example. Right. Yeah. So digitale pioniers, where there's ideas and they are funded by the government. So there's different small things in that way. Yeah.
Terrific. Can everyone put their hands together, please, to thank David very much for coming.